And that creates a lot of interaction and discourse, and in fact disagreements and arguments. What the writer is talking about is when we do the parades to show the world who we are, that there are a number of people who might be men in drag, people who costume. The parade is a celebration and a festival. And there are people who really get into that, whether they're gay or straight. Mardi Gras would be an example of a heterosexual bacchanalia where people are costuming and acting outrageous.
And many men in the Mardi Gras parade dress as women. It's
all kinds of costuming,
right.
And the women bare their breasts, and it's an open display
but no one
of
says
outrageousness.
much about that.
What this writer is talking about is that in the St. Louis parade, ACT UP was supposed to be near the front, and they had gotten repositioned further back in the parade. The argument or the tension in the community is those of us who are gay and lesbian who wish to be, who are just like everyone else. You would never know we're gay or lesbian to look at us, and don't believe that we're different or freaks. And those of us who are gay and lesbian who, for whatever reason, may be different, that the gay community has been rejected for being different by straight culture and straight society, that there are many of us who say we can't be guilty of the same thing. And so there's a real tendency to try to be open and accepting of very diverse people. And that's difficult.
It is difficult.
I'm encouraged because I think that if we can do it, then we can set an example for the rest of society of how we really do operate as a multicultural, diverse community that accepts people who are different. In the process, there are a lot of gay and lesbian people who find outrageous conduct inappropriate as much as any straight people do.
Of course, and that really is the point.
The other problem is that in our parades and picnics and stuff, we're talking about a minute number of people who are outrageous. But the media, especially television media, it's a picture medium. They need an image and a picture, and they tend to, you get a 20, 30-second newscast on the evening news, and you get 15 seconds of that of outrageous behavior, when in fact it's 1% of the parade participants. So it presents a distorted perspective to television viewers especially.
I do agree with that. I would submit to you, though, that when one is a minority, one is never considered as an individual but as a member of a group.
Right.
And let's take the black football players, for example. O.J. Simpson is a name that everybody, he is not black. He's a football player because he has truly been successful and is a hero for many people. But as a group, if a criminal, for example, a black person holds up a store, or there's a rape, it's never Johnny Jones did it, it's a black person. See, and
but
so you carry a label, I think.
On the other hand, if those crimes are committed 50-50 by blacks or whites, but the TV news only shows black criminals, then the perception out there is that, you know, drug abuse, for example, is perceived to be a minority, a greater problem in minority communities when the majority of drug users are white. There's a lot of myths in our culture and our society about minority people, and if you want to know and understand gay people, go to the parade for yourself and make your own judgment. I'm proud of the gay pride parades that have been held in Kansas City and St. Louis. There are people who are outrageous that show up for anything. St. Patrick's Day. You know, I could go into the camcorder to the St. Patrick's Day parade and make it look like like a real horrifying experience for people.
Well, and the point that John is trying to make is that vignettes do not always tell the whole story.
That's right.
And, you know, the rest of this gentleman's letter suggests that there are many very important issues in the gay and lesbian community that should be addressed. Let us move to one of those. Washington University in St. Louis was the site for a church gathering, and there is a lot of problem in the church. The subject is, can we all get along? And in the religious aspect of this whole thing, there have arisen some tremendous problems that certainly are worthy of being addressed, and that is that some religious groups have said, you're a gay, you're a lesbian, we don't want you. Mm-hmm. What do you think about that?
Well, you know, you say the church like it's one body. It's not. It's many bodies, and there's many denominations and churches that have been welcoming and affirming of gay and lesbian people. Disciples of Christ, Unitarians, and others come to mind right offhand. Religion is, Christianity in particular in this country has historically been one of the big sources of misinformation about gay and lesbian people. And the church, if you look at it, the history of Christianity and religion in this country, and before this country was founded, it doesn't have a very good track record of tolerance and acceptance of people who don't goose step with the church doctrine. And so I think what we're seeing is the church struggling and dealing with the issue of its gay and lesbian members.
And I really do
that will sooner or later happen, but you're talking about a huge institution that does not change
easily. Well, but the key is what you said. The churches are struggling. Here is the Van Brent Presbyterian Church declared this is in Kansas City, declared itself a more light, quote unquote, church.
Right.
And here is one church among many that has said, you know, whoever you may be, if you wish to worship, you are welcome.
Right. There are designations within many denominations for congregations who are welcoming of gay and lesbian people. Presbyterians have still chosen not to ordain a woman, Janie Spar, who's a lesbian minister. So there's still work to be done in those denominations.
But she's also a female, so that I mean, she's got a double whammy.
Like I said, the church doesn't move, doesn't change easily or quickly.
No, it doesn't. But the point is that, you know, again, just as vignettes do not show a population, one can not make a broad general statement about anything, because there are churches within groups who are trying desperately to live what they preach.
I think that's the other important thing around religion and the issue of gays and lesbians, is that there is not one belief system that there are churches and denominations who have accepted and who do welcome gay and lesbian people, and that the church, while it has a role to play in our society and our culture, does not have the right to impose any particular dogma on all of us. And that's one of the unique things about this country, is that we do have a separation of the church and state. They're free to do what they wish, but they don't have the right to impose a particular belief on the rest of us.
Well, right. And don't you think really what we're talking about is putting things in their proper perspective? I mean, you know, we blow things up rather all out of proportion, I think.
Yeah, I would love to see the day when I don't have a job and don't have a paper, and that we aren't labeling people one way or the other.
Like to work yourself out of a job. No, I think that's true. There's a book that's reviewed in here, and it's called Jesus Acted Up, a Gay and Lesbian Manifesto.
You're going to ask me about something I probably haven't read.
Well, I haven't read it either, but some of the comments are interesting in the book review. And it was written by a man by the name of Robert Goss, and he's going to teach at St. Louis University this fall. He really describes his book as an advocacy book that begins a gay and lesbian theology. Of course, right there, I might take exception to that, because I personally find things objectionable that further polarize the population. So I guess right there, my antenna go up, because I don't like to see repolarization of a population that's struggling as it is. But what he says, organized Christianity has institutionalized heterosexism and homophobia, which is just sort of what we're talking about. It's very difficult when a subject is institutionalized to move it off of the dime, as they say. So books are beginning to come out, and what he's calling for is gays and lesbians, what he says, to reject unequivocally the biblical terrorism, homophobic rhetoric, and heterosexist theology of the Christian church. Now, this man is angry, and
yes, I think that the title "Jesus Acted Up," "Act Up," is perceived to be a militant activist group, and this is one person's perspective and opinion.
Yeah. So you know. And that's, again, the point. There are many perspectives, many opinions, and I think you would be the last person to say, as you read the newspaper, I expect you to be able to accept everything in it.
We publish things all the time I don't agree with. Right. I'm not particularly religious, but we publish religious news.